The huge meeting room was full of angry voices. Admiral Taejin stood in the center, surrounded by alien creatures from all over the galaxy. Their eyes were fixed on him, and none of them looked happy. The news was bad. Very bad. The Korthic Empire had built the biggest war fleet anyone had ever seen. 3,000 ships. Each one was a killer, designed to destroy planets and wipe out entire civilizations. They were moving fast toward the core worlds where billions of people lived. So, what do the humans offer? Asked High Commander Vextar. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin like metal. His voice was cold and mocking. Where is your great fleet? Where are your backup ships? Taejin kept his face calm. He had been in meetings like this before. The aliens always thought. Humans were weak. They always underestimated Earth's children. We are sending the Eternal Dawn, he said simply. The room exploded with noise. Some aliens clicked their teeth. Others made high whistling sounds. A few just laughed out loud. The sound echoed off the metal walls and made Taejin's ears ring. The Eternal Dawn? The voice belonged to Ambassador Kyle from the Altarian Council. Her body was made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. That is just a story. Human, a ghost ship that exists only in your databases. Our intelligence networks have searched for years, added Commander Zorthik from the Vorian fleet. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence as he spoke. No ship matching those specifications exists anywhere. The size you claim is impossible. The weapons you describe break the laws of physics. More voices joined in. They all said the same thing. The Eternal Dawn was a myth? A lie, a story humans told to make themselves feel important. Taejin listened to them all. He had heard it before. For 30 years, the galaxy had dismissed human claims about the ship. Every time someone asked to see it, human officials would give excuses. It was classified. It was in deep space. It was undergoing repairs. The truth was simpler and more complex than any of them knew. The doors at the back of the room opened with a soft hiss. Fleet Admiral Yuna walked in. She was old now, with gray hair and lines on her face that told stories of 1,000 battles. Scars ran down her left cheek where Korthic claws had nearly killed her 20 years ago. Gentlemen, she said, and her voice cut through the noise like a knife through paper. The Eternal Dawn is not a myth. She has been waiting 30 years for this moment. The aliens looked at her with doubt in their eyes. Commander Vextar laughed again, a sound like grinding metal. Admiral Yuna, your reputation precedes you. But even you cannot make a ghost ship real. Our sensors have mapped every human facility. No vessel of the claimed size exists. Yuna smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Your sensors see what we want them to see? She walked to the center of the room and activated a hologram projector. Images filled the air above their heads. Battle reports, casualty lists. Destroyed. Colonies, dead worlds. 30 years ago, the Mentari Collective wiped out our colony on Kepler Prime. 2 million humans died in one day. The images showed burning cities and empty streets. The Solarian Republic took our mining stations in the Vega system. They sold our people as slaves. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. They remembered those events differently. In their histories, humans were just another weak species that got in the way. The Hegemony fleet destroyed our research station at Volf 359. 3,000 scientists died, including my daughter. Yuna's voice stayed steady, but her hands clenched into fists. Each time, you all told us the same thing. Humans are too weak. Humans should stay in their corner of the galaxy. Humans should know their place. She turned off the hologram and looked around the room. Her eyes met each alien gaze without flinching. So we learned, we adapted. We built something you said was impossible. Even if such a ship exists, said Ambassador Kyle, one vessel cannot stop 3,000. The mathematics are simple. Mathematics, Yuna repeated. Yes, the aliens always love their mathematics. 3,000 ships versus 1. The odds are clear, she paused. But mathematics did not account for human stubbornness. Far away from the meeting room, in a place the galaxy had forgotten to look, something was stirring. Luna shipyards had been building civilian vessels for decades, cargo ships, passenger liners. Nothing military. Nothing threatening, but deep beneath the main construction bays, in a section marked as abandoned on all official records, Space Dock 7 was very much alive. Dr. Dongwu walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls hummed with power. Lights flickered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The air itself felt different here, charged with possibilities. "Captain," said a voice from the shadows. Chief Engineer Bioram stepped into the light. Her hands were covered in burns from working with exotic materials. Her eyes held the fever of someone who had seen impossible things become real. "All systems are ready," Dongwu nodded. He had been preparing for this day since he was a young officer. His whole life had led to this moment. How long? He asked. 6 hours to full activation. 12 hours to reach the battle zone. But Bioram's voice was steady, but he could see the excitement in her eyes. 30 years of work, Captain. 30 years of human genius compressed into one vessel. They walked together through the ship's heart. Past reactors that bent the rules of physics. Past weapons that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Past computers that thought faster than any alien mind could comprehend. Do you think they will believe it when they see it? Bioram asked. Dong Dashwu considered the question. In the meeting room, the aliens were still arguing. Still convinced that humans were weak and helpless. Still certain that their numbers and their technology made them superior. They will believe, he said finally. When the eternal dawn appears, the galaxy will remember why they should never underestimate humanity. The ship around them continued to wake up. Systems that had waited decades for activation came online one by one. The eternal dawn was more than a vessel, it was a promise kept. A threat fulfilled. A legend about to become reality, and in a few hours, 3,000 enemy ships would learn that sometimes the most dangerous myths are the ones that turn out to be true. Captain Dongwu's footsteps echoed through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were not made of normal metal. They were dark and smooth like liquid shadow that had been frozen solid. Strange lights moved beneath the surface, pulsing. In rhythm with the ship's heartbeat. Chief Engineer Bioram walked beside him. Her hands still bore the marks of working with materials that should not exist, burns from touching pure energy, scars from handling compressed space-time. Each mark was a badge of honor from 30 years of impossible work. The quantum chambers are stable, Captain, she reported. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with pride. All 7 stellar lance cannons are charged and ready. The quantum disruptor array shows green across all boards. They stopped at a massive window that looked out into the ship's interior. What they saw would have driven most minds to madness. The Eternal Dawn was not built like other ships. It existed in multiple dimensions at once. Corridors folded back on themselves. Rooms were bigger inside than outside. Physics worked differently here because humans had rewritten the rules. 15 kilometers long, Dongwu said softly. The aliens said it was impossible, too big to build, too complex to operate, too advanced for a species like humanity. Bioram smiled. It was not a kind smile. They forgot that humans are very good at proving people wrong. On the bridge, Weapons Officer Haijin ran her hands over controls that looked like they belonged in a dream. The weapon systems were beautiful and terrible. Each cannon could destroy a moon. Each missile could crack a planet. The quantum disruptor could make enemy ships forget they existed. All weapons responding normally, Captain, she reported when Dongwu arrived. The targeting computers are locked onto optimal firing solutions. We are ready for combat. Commander Sujin was not human. She came from the Zenthari Republic, one of the few alien nations that had stayed friendly with Earth. Her people had long necks and silver skin that changed color with their emotions. Right now, her skin was pale blue with shock. This is impossible, she whispered. Her voice shook as she looked around the bridge. My sensors cannot understand what they are seeing. The gravitational readings are off every scale. Spacetime is bent around this vessel like it weighs as much as a star. The ship's computer spoke in a voice that sounded perfectly human. It called itself a EGIS, and it was more than just a machine. It was an artificial mind that could think faster than any biological brain. Captain, all systems are operating within acceptable parameters, AEGS reported. The full drive is ready for combat deployment. Temporal displacement fields are stable. Reality anchors are holding at optimal levels. Dr. Kyung-ho looked up from his science station. He was the oldest person on the ship and the smartest. His hair was white now, but his mind was still sharp as a razor. He had spent his whole life working on the technologies that made this ship possible. Every time they defeated us, we learned something new, he explained to Commander Soo-jin. Her skin had turned green with confusion. When the Mentari destroyed our colonies, we studied their plasma weapons and built better shields. When the Solarians enslaved our people, we learned their navigation systems and improved them. When the hegemony killed our families, we took their reactor designs and made them more efficient. But this goes beyond simple improvements, Soo-jin protested. These readings suggest you have violated fundamental laws of physics. Dr. Kyung-ho laughed. It was the laugh of a man who had done impossible things every day for 30 years. Laws are made to be broken, Commander, especially when your people's survival depends on it. Navigator Yunwoo called out from his station. His screen showed star maps that hurt to look at directly. Space was folded and twisted around the ship like origami made from reality itself. Captain, I have the enemy fleet on long-range sensors. 3,000 ships moving through the Kepler system. They are heading for the colony worlds at maximum speed. Time to intercept? At normal speeds, 18 hours, with the full drive... Yunwoo paused, double-checking his calculations. We can be there in 6 minutes. The bridge fell silent. Even among the crew of the Eternal Dawn, something still seemed magical. Shield Officer Minho ran diagnostics on defensive systems that bent the mind to contemplate. The void shields did not just stop enemy fire. They made enemy fire forget it existed. The temporal displacement fields kept the ship 1 second ahead of any attack. The reality anchors made sure the ship stayed in the same dimension as its enemies. All defensive systems optimal, Captain, he reported. We are ready for whatever they bring. Commander Soo-jin watched everything with growing amazement and fear. Her people were advanced. They had built great ships and conquered many worlds. But this vessel made their greatest achievements look like children's toys. How many ships like this do you have? She asked quietly. Captain Dongwoo turned to look at her. His face was calm, but she could see something burning in his eyes. Something that had been growing for 30 years of defeats and humiliation. Just one, he said. We put everything we had into this single ship, every resource, every idea, every dream of revenge. He paused. It was enough. Dr. Kyung-ho began final system checks. The ship's exotic technologies were all working perfectly. The gravitational anchor could trap entire fleets in place. The phase shift generators could make the ship exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The temporal loops could give them extra time to react to enemy attacks. All systems green, Captain. The Eternal Dawn is ready for her first real battle. Chief. Engineer Bioram looked at readings that would have been impossible on any other ship. The reactors were generating more power than most stars. The weapon systems could destroy fleets. The defensive systems could stop anything the galaxy could throw at them. 30 years, she said softly. 30 years of being told we were too weak, too stupid, too primitive to matter. Her voice grew stronger. Today, we show them what humans can do when they have time to think. Captain Dongwoo stood in the center of his bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3,000 enemy ships were moving toward human worlds. They thought they were invincible. They thought nothing could stop them. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Aye, ice, he said calmly. Set course for the Kepler system, maximum speed. Acknowledged, Captain, engaging full drive in 10 seconds. The Eternal Dawn began to move. Space twisted around her like water around a stone. Reality bent and folded as the ship slipped between dimensions. In 6 minutes, she would arrive at the battle zone. And then the galaxy would see what happened when humans had 30 years to plan their revenge. Warlord Crack stood on the bridge of his flagship and felt like a god of war. The Decimator was 3 kilometers of pure destruction, armed with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop small suns. It was the pride of the Korthik Empire, and today it led the greatest fleet in galactic history. 3,000 ships filled the space around him. Massive dreadnoughts that could destroy whole cities with a single shot. Fast destroyers that moved like hungry sharks through the void. Heavy cruisers loaded with enough firepower to level continents. All of them flew the red and black banner of the Korthik Empire. "My lord," said Sub-Commander Threx from his station. His scaled hide was bright green with excitement. "The human colonies are defenseless. Our scouts report no significant military presence in the system." Crax's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. It was a sound like breaking bones. As expected, humans talk big, but when real warriors come, they hide like frightened children. The Korthik had conquered 17 star systems in the past 5 years. Each victory had been easier than the last. The Mentari Collective had lasted 3 days. The proud Solarian Republic had fallen in a week. The Hegemony fleet had begged for mercy after losing half their ships in the first battle, but those victories felt small compared to what was coming. The human colonies held billions of people, rich worlds with advanced technology, mining stations full of rare metals. It would be the greatest conquest in Korthik history. "My lord," Threx said, looking up from his sensor display. "Long-range scanners detect a single ship approaching our position." "One ship?" Crax laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "The humans send 1 ship against 3,000? Perhaps they seek an honorable death." "On the heavy cruiser Bone Crusher?" Captain Vorthak studied his tactical display with growing confusion. He was old for a Korthek, with scars covering his gray hide. He had fought in 100 battles and won them all. But something about this felt wrong. "Tactical Officer Gorthik," he growled. "Give me details on this human vessel." Gorthek's claws clicked nervously on his controls. "That is the problem, Captain. The sensors cannot determine the ship's exact specifications. Size estimates vary from very small and close to very large and distant." "Incompetent fool!" Vorthek's roar shook. "The bridge. How can you not measure one simple ship?" "The readings make no sense, sir." "The gravitational signature suggests something massive, but visual scans show nothing unusual." "Energy readings are ... double quotes." He paused, checking his instruments again. "The energy readings are impossible." Similar conversations were happening across the fleet. On the destroyer Night Terror, Commander Skelth reported sensor malfunctions to her crew. On the battleship Death's Edge, Captain Morphic ordered his engineers to recalibrate their instruments. None of them understood what they were seeing because none of them had ever encountered technology like this before. On the support vessel Inevitable Victory, Commander Zephy studied her displays with growing unease. She was not Korthek, but came from the Hegemony fleet. Her people were known for their scientific knowledge and careful planning. "These energy signatures are completely unprecedented," she told her science officer. "The power output suggests a reactor the size of a small moon. But that would require materials and engineering techniques that simply do not exist." Her science officer, a thin creature with 4 eyes, looked up from his console. "Commander, there is another possibility. What if the humans have developed technology beyond our current understanding?" Zephy's made a dismissive gesture with her tentacles. "Impossible. Humans are barely a century into space travel. They have no advanced science, no exotic materials, no understanding of higher physics." But even as she said it, doubt crept into her mind. The sensor readings were unlike anything in their databases. Whatever was approaching defied every rule of physics and engineering that her people had discovered in 10,000 years of space travel. Across the fleet, the same questions were being asked. How could one ship generate so much power? Why couldn't their sensors get a clear reading? What kind of technology could confuse the most advanced detection systems in the galaxy? Warlord Krax grew tired of the confusion. Enough of this nonsense. One ship cannot threaten our fleet. All vessels maintain attack formation. When this mysterious human vessel arrives, we will destroy it quickly and move on to the real conquest. His words were broadcast across the entire fleet. 3,000 ships acknowledged the order and prepared for battle. Gun crews loaded their weapons. Shield generators powered up to maximum. Fighter squadrons prepared to launch. They were ready for anything the humans could throw at them, or so they thought. The space around them began to shimmer. Reality rippled like water disturbed by a stone. Stars seemed to bend and twist as something impossibly large pushed its way into normal spacetime. Then the eternal dawn appeared. 15 kilometers of impossible human engineering materialized before them. The ship was sleek and deadly, like a sword made from liquid darkness. Its hull seemed to absorb light, making it hard to look at directly. Energy fields crackled around it, causing nearby space to ripple and bend. The bridge of the decimator fell silent. Every Korthic warrior stared at the human vessel with shock and growing fear. It was larger than their biggest dreadnought, more beautiful than their finest art, more terrifying than their darkest nightmares. By the void ... Warlord Krax whispered. That thing actually exists. Sub-Commander Threx's scales had turned pale yellow with fear. My lord, sensors are completely confused. The ship appears to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our targeting computers cannot lock onto it. Impossible. Krax roared, but his voice shook. No single ship can be that large. No species can build something like that. On the Bone Crusher, Captain Vorthak stared at his displays in disbelief. The human ship was bigger than anything in his experience. Its energy signature was off every scale. Weapons ports lined its hull like the eyes of some vast predator. All ships, he broadcast on the fleet command frequency. Prepare for immediate attack. Target all weapons on the human vessel. But even as he gave the order, Vorthak felt something he had never experienced before in battle. Fear, real, cold, paralyzing fear. Commander Zephys watched the readings on her scientific instruments and felt her worldview crumble. This is impossible, she said to no one in particular. The material science alone would require centuries of development. The power systems would need resources we have never discovered. The weapons technology. She stopped, unable to continue. The eternal dawn hung in space like a dark omen. It made no aggressive moves, sent no threatening messages, but its very presence was a statement that could not be ignored. For 30 years, the galaxy had dismissed human claims about this ship. They had called it a myth, a lie, a desperate fantasy from a weak species trying to seem important. Now it was here, and 3,000 of the galaxy's finest warships suddenly felt very small and very vulnerable. The humans had been waiting, planning, building, and now their patience was about to pay off in ways the galaxy could not imagine. The bridge of the eternal dawn hummed with quiet energy. Captain Dongwu sat in his command chair and watched as his crew prepared for the battle they had all dreamed about for 30 years. Every person on this ship had lost someone to alien aggression. Every person had sworn an oath to make the galaxy remember why humans should not be underestimated. Weapons status, he said calmly. Weapons Officer Hyjin's hands moved over controls that glowed with inner fire. All stellar lance arrays charged to maximum capacity, Captain. 7 cannons ready to fire. Quantum disruptor array shows full power across all nodes. The stellar lances were humanity's answer to enemy shields. Each cannon fired a beam of concentrated starfire that could cut through any known material. The quantum disruptor was something else entirely. It fired waves of energy that made the target forget how to exist. Shield status, Dongwu continued. Shield. Officer Minho monitored systems that bent reality around the ship. Void shield generators at 100% efficiency, Captain. Temporal displacement fields are stable. Reality anchors holding steady. The void shields did not work like normal defensive systems. They created pockets of empty space that absorbed incoming fire and sent it nowhere. The temporal displacement fields kept the ship slightly ahead of time, making enemy weapons miss by fractions of a second. The reality anchors made sure the ship stayed in the same dimension as its enemies. Chief Tactical Officer Su Young studied the enemy formation with the eye of someone who had planned this battle 1,000 times. Enemy vessels arranged in a classic sphere formation, Captain. They are trying to attack from all directions at once. Total count confirmed at 3,000 ships. Dr. Kyung-ho monitored the exotic technologies that made their ship possible. All systems operating within normal parameters, Captain. Temporal displacement field holding steady. Multi-dimensional combat array ready for activation. Incoming transmission from the enemy flagship, announced Communications Officer Ji-hoon. Put it on screen. The main display flickered to life, showing the scarred face of Warlord Krax. His eyes were red with rage, and his mandibles clicked together in fury. "Human vessel," he snarled. "You are outnumbered 3,000 to 1. Your ship may be large, but it is still only one vessel against my entire fleet. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Captain Dongwu stood slowly. He was not a tall man, but something in his presence made him seem larger than life. "Warlord Krax, your empire has spent decades conquering the galaxy through overwhelming numbers. You destroy the weak and enslave the defenseless. Today you learn what happens when humanity has had enough time to think." Krax's laugh was like breaking glass. "Think all you want, human. No amount of clever planning can overcome simple mathematics. 3,000 ships will tear your vessel apart." "Warlord," Dongwu said quietly, "you still do not understand. We do not need to defeat your fleet." He paused, and his eyes hardened. "Like steel. We just need to remind the galaxy that humanity does not give up." He turned to his crew. "A. Activate Combat Protocol Omega." The ship's artificial intelligence responded instantly. "Acknowledged, Captain. Engaging multi-dimensional combat array." The eternal dawn began to shimmer. Reality around the ship rippled like water. And then, impossibly, there were 2 of them. Then 4, then 8. The ship was creating quantum echoes of itself across multiple dimensional planes on the Decimator's bridge. Warlord Krax stared in horror as his sensors detected dozens of identical human vessels. "This is impossible. Our instruments must be malfunctioning." Subcommander Threx's scales had turned white with terror. "My lord, all sensors confirm multiple targets. Each one shows the same massive energy signature. Each one appears to be fully armed and operational." "Physics does not work that way," screamed the ship's science officer. "Matter cannot exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Chief Engineer Bioram smiled grimly as she monitored the quantum systems. "Physics work however humans need them to work. We have had 30 years to rewrite the rules." The multi-dimensional combat array was humanity's greatest achievement. By existing in several dimensions at once, the Eternal Dawn could attack from angles that did not exist in normal space. Enemy ships would find themselves under fire from directions their minds could not comprehend. Dr. Kyung-ho watched the readings with pride. "Every defeat taught us something new. When the Solarians used quantum weapons against our colonies, we learned to manipulate quantum mechanics. When the hegemony destroyed our research stations with dimensional bombs, we learned to control dimensional space. When the Mentari wiped out our people with exotic matter, we learned to make exotic matter work for us." Captain Dongwu surveyed the enemy fleet through sensors that could see across multiple realities. 3,000 ships hung in space around them, their crews paralyzed by fear and confusion. "All ships," came Krax's voice over the enemy communications. "Open fire! Destroy all targets! Show these humans the price of defying the Korthic Empire." The enemy fleet opened fire as one. Thousands of plasma bolts, missile swarms, and energy beams converged on the Eternal Dawn from every direction. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The attack struck the void shields and simply disappeared. Some were absorbed into pocket dimensions, others were redirected into empty space. A few were sent back in time to arrive before they were fired. Not a single shot reached the ship's hull. "Their turn," Captain Dongwu said quietly. Weapons Officer Haijin had been waiting for this moment her entire career. Her family had died on Kepler Prime when the Mentari destroyed the colony. She had joined the Eternal Dawn project to make sure their deaths meant something. "Stellar Lance Array 1, target the enemy heavy cruiser formation," she said, her voice steady as stone. "Stellar Lance Array 2, sweep the destroyer screen. All arrays, fire when ready." The Eternal Dawns. Weapons came alive. 7 beams of concentrated starfire lanced out across space, each one capable of cutting through any known material. Where they touched enemy ships, metal simply ceased to exist. Hulls were sliced apart like paper. Entire vessels disappeared. In bursts of light, the quantum disruptor fired next. A wave of impossible energy spread across the battlefield and reality hiccuped. Enemy ships caught in the field found their hulls aging centuries in seconds. Their weapon systems failed as the laws of physics became negotiable. Some vessels simply forgot they existed and faded away like bad dreams. Warlord Krax watched his outer formations evaporate in the first 30 seconds of combat. 50 ships gone, 100, 200. Each loss was a veteran crew with decades of experience. "This is madness," he roared. "How can one ship generate this much firepower?" But it was not just one ship anymore. The quantum echoes of the Eternal Dawn moved through his fleet like ghosts, firing from impossible angles. His ships tried to return fire, but their weapons passed harmlessly through targets that existed in different dimensions. Navigator Yun Wu called out coordinates as the ship danced through space with impossible grace. "Captain, enemy command. Vessel attempting to escape. Shall I intercept?" "Do it." The great ship moved through space like a living thing. Its inertial drive allowed it to change direction without regard for momentum or physics. It was everywhere and nowhere, striking like lightning and vanishing like smoke. The battle was no longer a fight. It was an execution. The battle exploded across space like a star going nova. The Eternal Dawn and her quantum echoes moved through the Korthic fleet with the fury of 30 years of human rage finally set free. Every shot fired was for a dead colony, every enemy. Ship destroyed was payment for a murdered family. Chief Gunner Wu Jin coordinated the assault with the precision of a master artist. His family had been miners on Vega Station when the Solarians took it. He had watched his parents dragged away in chains while aliens laughed at human weakness. Today, he painted his revenge across the void in beams of stellar fire. "Port Stellar Array, target the heavy cruiser formation bearing 27 Mark IV, he called out. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with satisfaction. "Starboard Array, sweep the destroyer screen at bearing 91 Mark VII, quantum disruptor, focus fire on their flagship." The stellar lance cannons fired in perfect synchronization. 7 beams of concentrated star matter reached out across space and touched the enemy fleet. Where they struck, reality broke down. Molecular bombs were severed at the quantum level. Enemy ships did not just explode, they simply stopped existing. The heavy cruiser Bone Crusher tried to maneuver away from the incoming fire. Captain Vorthak screamed orders at his crew as the human weapon approached. The beam touched his ship's forward shields and passed through them like they weren't there. The entire front half of his vessel aged 1,000,000 years in 1 second, crumbling to dust in the vacuum of space. The quantum disruptor unleashed hell in a new form. Waves of impossible energy rippled across the battlefield, making reality itself uncertain. Enemy vessels caught in the field found their hulls flickering between existing and not existing. Their weapons forgot how to fire. Their shields forgot how to activate. Their crews forgot why they were there. Impossible. Warlord Krax roared as he watched half his fleet disappear in the first minute of combat. "No weapon can do this. The laws of physics forbid it." Subcommander Threx had given up trying to understand what he was seeing. His instruments showed readings that made no sense. Ships were being destroyed by weapons that should not exist. The human vessel was moving in ways that violated every law of motion ever discovered. "My lord," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We must retreat. This vessel. It is not just a ship. It is something beyond our understanding." But retreat was no longer possible. The Eternal Dawn had activated another of its impossible systems. Space around the enemy fleet began to bend and twist as artificial gravity wells formed from nothing. The gravitational anchor system trapped the Korthic ships in place like insects in amber. Navigator Yunwu monitored the gravity fields with satisfaction. "All enemy vessels locked in position, Captain. They cannot escape the combat zone." Captain Dongwu nodded. This was how it had to be. For 30 years, alien fleets had attacked human colonies and then fled before reinforcements could arrive. Today there would be no escape. Today, the galaxy would see what happened when humans had time to plan their revenge. The great ship moved through space with grace that defied belief. Its inertialese drive allowed it to dance between enemy formations. Without slowing down, plasma bolts fired at point-blank range passed harmlessly through quantum echoes. Missiles locked onto targets that existed in 17 dimensions. SIMULTANEOUSLY Dr. Kyung Ho watched his exotic technologies perform beyond even his wildest dreams. "Temporal displacement fields holding steady, Captain. We are maintaining position. 1.3 seconds ahead of their targeting solutions. Enemy weapons are striking where we were, not where we are." The science was beautiful in its simplicity. By existing slightly ahead in time, the Eternal Dawn was untouchable. Enemy gunners would fire at the ship's current position, only to watch. Their shots passed through empty space. The ship had already moved to where it would be when their weapons arrived. Shield Officer Minho monitored defensive systems that made enemy attacks irrelevant. "Void shields operating at optimal efficiency, Captain. All incoming fire is being redirected to pocket dimensions. 0 damage to hull or internal systems." The void shields were humanity's answer to overwhelming firepower. Instead of stopping enemy weapons, they simply made those weapons go somewhere else. Plasma bolts disappeared into tiny black holes. Energy beams were sent to parallel universes. Missile swarms were redirected to attack empty space. On the destroyer Night Terror, Commander Skelth watched her weapons fire uselessly into nothing. Every shot her ship fired seemed to hit the human vessel, but no damage was recorded. It was like fighting a ghost made of starlight and nightmares. "All weapons, concentrate fire on the human ship's engine section," she ordered desperately. Her weapons officer, a young Korthek with bright green scales, looked up from his controls. "Commander, our targeting computers cannot identify an engine section. The vessel appears to be propelled by ... nothing. There are no exhaust ports. No reactor signatures, no energy emissions consistent with any known propulsion system." The truth was even stranger than they could imagine. The Eternal Dawn did not move through space. It convinced space to move around it. The ship existed in a state of controlled quantum uncertainty, allowing it to be wherever it needed to be. Without actually traveling there, Warlord Krax stood on his bridge and felt his empire crumbling around him. In 5 minutes of combat, he had lost 1,000 ships, 1,000 crews. 1,000 years of Korthic military tradition burned away by human weapons that should not exist. "Signal all ships," he commanded. "Ramming speed. If we cannot destroy them with weapons, we will crush them with our hulls." But even ramming attacks proved useless. Enemy ships accelerated toward the Eternal Dawn at maximum speed, only to pass harmlessly through quantum echoes. The real ship existed in dimensions their crude sensors could not detect. Chief Engineer B.O. Ram monitored the ship's exotic systems with growing excitement. Every technology was working perfectly. The phase shift generators allowed them to exist in multiple realities at once. The temporal loops gave them extra time to react to enemy attacks. The reality anchors kept them connected to baseline spacetime. "All systems green across the board, Captain," she reported. "Hull integrity at 100%. All weapon systems operating within optimal parameters. We are ready to continue combat indefinitely." Communications Officer Ji-hoon looked up from his station with amazement in his eyes. "Captain, we are receiving surrender requests from 17 enemy vessels. They are requesting permission to withdraw from the battle zone. Captain Dongwu considered the request for exactly 1 second. Denied. Today, the galaxy learns that attacking human colonies has consequences. The Eternal Dawn continued its deadly dance through space. Each movement was calculated to maximum effect. Each shot was fired with perfect precision. This was not just a battle, it was a demonstration. A message written in fire and wreckage across the void. The message was simple. Humanity remembers, humanity learns, and humanity never ever forgives. The last Korthic vessel fell silent as its hull cracked apart under the weight of its own impossibility. The destroyer had tried to escape through hyperspace, only to find that the Eternal Dawn had collapsed the jump points around the battlefield. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Only the cold embrace of space and the judgment of humanity. Captain Dongwu stood on his bridge and surveyed the aftermath of 30 years of human planning. Where once 3,000 enemy ships had darkened the void, now only debris remained. Twisted metal and frozen atmosphere drifted in the darkness like the remnants of a nightmare. Casualty report, he said quietly. Chief Engineer Burram checked her readings with something approaching disbelief. Minor hull scoring on the port side from a lucky plasma hit, Captain. All primary systems operational, all secondary systems operational. All crew members report green status. She paused as if she could not believe her own words. 0 casualties aboard. The bridge fell silent. They had fought the largest fleet in galactic history and emerged without losing a single life. It was more than victory, it was vindication of every choice they had made, every year they had spent building this impossible ship. Communications Officer Ji-hoon looked up from his station with wonder in his eyes. Captain, long-range communications are lighting up across the galaxy. Word of the battle is spreading faster than light. On the Galactic Council station, thousands of light years away, Admiral Taejin watched the sensor readings with quiet satisfaction. The alien representatives who had mocked humanity just hours before now sat in stunned silence as the data streams confirmed the impossible. 3,000 enemy ships destroyed. 1 human vessel victorious. 0 human casualties. High Commander Vextar of the Hegemony Fleet was the first to speak. His forearms trembled as he processed the information. The readings must be in error. No single vessel could accomplish this level of destruction. Our computers must be malfunctioning. Fleet Admiral Yuna stepped forward with a smile that was both kind and terrible. The readings are correct, Commander. The Eternal Dawn was humanity's answer to a galaxy that kept underestimating us. Every time we were pushed to the brink of extinction, we learned something new. Every time you called us weak, we found ways to become stronger. Ambassador Kylf's crystal body had turned a deep red color, the Altarian equivalent of shock and fear. This changes everything. If humans possess technology this advanced, the balance of power in the galaxy has shifted overnight. Not shifted, Yuna corrected, restored. For too long, stronger species have preyed on the weak. Today, the weak fought back and won. Across known space, the legend spread with the speed of quantum communication. On the mining worlds of the Outer Rim, human colonists who had lived in fear for decades suddenly stood a little taller. In the slave markets of the core systems, alien traders began to worry about human retaliation. The ship that supposedly did not exist had saved countless worlds from conquest. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Dr. Kyung-ho reflected on a lifetime of impossible work. His hands, scarred from handling exotic materials, trembled with emotion as he watched the sensor displays showing empty space where the enemy fleet had been. 30 years of human ingenuity compressed into one vessel, he said softly. We took every defeat, every humiliation, every loss, and we learned from it. We studied their weapons and built better shields. We analyzed their tactics and developed superior strategies. We examined their technology and improved it beyond their recognition. Commander Sujin of the Zenthari Republic had remained on the bridge throughout the battle. Her silver skin had cycled through every color in her species. Emotional spectrum as she witnessed the impossible. Now she was a pale blue-white, the color of awe and respect. "I have served in fleets across the galaxy," she said. "I have seen the greatest ships ever built, but this ... She gestured at the bridge around them. "This is beyond anything I imagined possible. You have not just built a warship. You have built a legend made real." Captain Dongwu nodded slowly. "Legends are powerful things, Commander. They inspire hope in the weak and fear in the strong. Today, humanity became a legend that the galaxy will never forget." Navigator Yunwu called out from his station. "Captain, receiving priority communications from Earth Command. Admiral Chen requests immediate status report. Send them our logs. All of them. Let Earth see what their patience and sacrifice have accomplished." As the communications flowed across space, the political implications began to sink in. Species that had ignored human diplomatic requests for decades suddenly wanted to negotiate. Worlds that had closed their borders to human trade now offered exclusive deals. Military alliances that had rejected human membership began sending invitations. SHIELD Officer Minho monitored the ship's exotic systems as they powered down from combat status. "All defensive systems returning to standby mode, Captain. Temporal fields dissipating, reality anchors releasing. We are returning to normal spacetime." Chief Gunner Wujin secured his weapons with reluctance. The stellar lance arrays had performed flawlessly, each shot a perfect expression of human engineering and fury. "All weapon systems secured, Captain. Quantum disruptor array powering down to standby levels." Dr. Kyung Ho began the process of shutting down the most exotic technologies. The multidimensional combat array folded back into baseline reality. The phase shift generators stopped creating quantum echoes. The gravitational anchors released their hold on local spacetime. "All experimental systems returning to normal parameters," he reported. "The ship is ready for standard operations." But even in standby mode, the Eternal Dawn was a marvel that defied understanding. Alien scientists would spend decades trying to duplicate even the simplest systems aboard this vessel. Most would fail. Some would go mad trying to understand technologies that required a fundamentally different approach to physics. Communications Officer Ji-hoon looked up with amazement. "Captain, we are receiving surrender offers from 12 different star systems. The Mentari Collective is offering tribute. The Solarian Republic wants to negotiate reparations for past actions. Even the Hegemony Fleet is requesting diplomatic talks." Captain Dongwu smiled. It was the first truly happy expression anyone had seen on his face in 30 years. "Send them all the same message. Humanity is willing to talk. But any future aggression against human colonies will be met with overwhelming force." Fleet Admiral Yuna's voice came over the communication system from the council station. "Eternal Dawn, this is Admiral Yuna, on behalf of humanity and all free peoples. Of the galaxy, I want to say. Well done. You have given hope to species across the galaxy who thought they were powerless against stronger enemies." The bridge crew allowed themselves a moment of pride. They had done more than win a battle. They had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. No longer would alien species view humanity as weak prey to be exploited. No longer would human colonies stand alone against overwhelming odds. Captain Dongwu gave the order that ended humanity's greatest battle. "Navigator, set course for home. It's time to show the galaxy what we've accomplished." As the Eternal Dawn prepared to depart, space around the ship began to shimmer. The vessel faded from normal sensors, disappearing into whatever dimensional pocket it called home. But across the galaxy, the legend lived on. The human ship that didn't exist had proven that sometimes the most dangerous myths are the ones that turn out to be true, and the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.